Everybody and anybody, including myself, is talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback situation. But I think it's time to end the week by just examining all the realistic possibilities and where the Pittsburgh Steelers stand. Make this a real train of thought instead of a bunch of hypotheticals and glamour names that make sense for the Steelers. What's going on, everybody? I'm Noah Strackbein. Thank you for jumping on to Steelers to Go, your daily to-go cup of Pittsburgh Steelers news and analysis. Find us on youtube.com/all Steelers talkers. Subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. I apologize that there was no Steelers to Go yesterday. We had some computer issues. They didn't want to resolve themselves until very late last night. But I assure you, I spent all day trying to fix them to make sure that I could be back in front of this microphone this morning and make sure that we did not miss a hiccup, especially with the All Steelers Talk podcast coming out later this morning. Let's talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback situation, a topic that will remain the hottest topic of conversation throughout the offseason, a topic that will have probably every single name possible presented to it, probably already has had every single name possible presented to it, a topic that has led to Justin Fields being the top choice for the Pittsburgh Steelers and them being the front runners to land him, to Russell Wilson now as the Steelers' top landing spot and the Steelers favored to land him as well. Kirk Cousins' team saying, oh, okay, well, we're interested in the Pittsburgh Steelers. We're keeping an eye on that situation. Ryan Tannehill obviously has been tossed out there. Desmond Ridder in a trade with the Falcons has been tossed out there. Every scenario possible has been talked about, including keeping Kenny Pickett and making Kenny Pickett your guy. Mason Rudolph returning to the Pittsburgh Steelers. They've all been out there. Draft picks probably. ESPN's first mock draft with Field Yates had Bo Nix going to the Pittsburgh Steelers at 20. Every single name you could possibly think of has been tossed out for the Pittsburgh Steelers this offseason. They will continue to be tossed out. Nobody's going to shy away from, oh, the Steelers should go and sign this person or trade for this person or make this splash or use this draft pick or whatever. But sometimes you got to be realistic about a situation, look it in the eyes and say, all right, this is where we stand. And it will change. It is a constantly evolving roller coaster. We will go through the ebbs and flows of this offseason and the Steelers quarterback situation. That's just what's going to happen. We have no idea what the set in stone result is going to be in February. And we might not know it in March, but we will definitely know it by the beginning or the end of April. And once the Steelers take the field, it'll all go away. But until then, those are a long couple of months, and we will deal with every scenario possible. And we will have to break down every scenario possible and decide whether or not it's realistic or not realistic. So let's talk about where the Pittsburgh Steelers currently stand. Realistically, as we sit here today, Kenny Pickett is definitely the favorite to be the Pittsburgh Steelers starting quarterback in 2024. We have said that time and time again. We will continue to say that. That is the most realistic shot, the most realistic outcome. And I get it. To a lot of people, boring. To some people, cool. Give this kid another shot. See what happens in year 3. There are some people that say, oh, the Steelers are following the New England Patriots and they are 1 year behind, and this is just the Mac Jones evolution. That's where the Steelers are. No matter where you stand in the train of thought when it comes to this, your opinion when it comes to this, that is the most realistic outcome for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But there are others that we have to break down to decide whether or not they are realistic or not realistic. Just because Kenny Pickett is the most realistic doesn't mean that it is definitely going to happen. There are names out there. Justin Fields is obviously one of them. Bo Nix has been tossed out there. Kirk Cousins, Russell Wilson, Ryan Tannehill, Desmond Ridder. There are plenty of names to decide what ones should really be on this board and what ones should not be on this board. We'll start, obviously, with the big one that nobody wants to talk about anymore, and that's Justin Fields, a name that has exhausted everybody, that I have pushed to the masses, and I will not sit here and do it again. I will not sit here and try to convince anybody that Justin Fields should be the Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback in 2024, because whether or not you agree or disagree, that is not what we're talking about. We are talking about how realistic these possibilities are. Justin Fields Certainly a realistic possibility if the price tag is right, but that's just because you compare him to other options. You look at the NFL draft and you say, Bo Nix was tossed out there with the 20th pick in the draft to be the Pittsburgh Steelers selection. And I'm sorry, but the Pittsburgh Steelers wouldn't even consider it drafting a quarterback at number 20. That just doesn't make any sense. Why would you take a first round pick at number 20 when you already have a 20th pick in the draft or 21st or whatever the pick was in Kenny Pickett? The draft class is not that deep. It is not that impressive. Bo Nix is not a guy that is viewed right now as a complete game changer. He is viewed as a bit of a question mark. And the Steelers have holes, and if they are going to look at this team in complete totality, which they are going to look at it and say, look, we need a superstar with that 20th pick. And they are not going to risk it on another quarterback who has some serious question marks behind him. If they're going to use a draft pick on a quarterback, I think chances are it's a third-round pick, maybe a second, depending on who falls to them. But I would guess it's a third-round pick, fourth-round pick. A guy like, I don't know, Jordan Travis was tossed out there. Michael Pratt has been tossed out there. One of those names that are later. If Michael Penix falls to the third round, he's an option, certainly. One of those names. And if it comes to using a first or a second round pick on a quarterback, that's where Justin Fields comes into play, because it is much more realistic that the Pittsburgh Steelers go and trade for Justin Fields because they are big fans of Justin Fields, and that's a fact. I mean, Mike Tomlin loves his Ohio State guys. He loves what they can produce there. He's going to do his background if he's even considering Justin Fields. He will have all his homework done, and I guarantee you there are not many people sitting around who are going to go, that kid's not worth going to get. If the Steelers are going to use a first or a second round pick on a quarterback, it is going to be to trade for Justin Fields. And most likely it's a second round pick, maybe a third. But Bo Nix or J.J. McCarthy or whoever else you want to toss out there, pick 20, not the answer. Not going to happen. Very unrealistic. When it comes to Kirk Cousins, $40 million plus a year, $90 million guaranteed is the expectation over the first two seasons. Pushing late 30s. I don't know about that one. Mike Florio loves to talk, and most times when he does talk, he's wrong. But he likes to say things, and this time he said that Kirk Cousins' camp is watching, keeping an eye on the Pittsburgh Steelers, just seeing what's going on there. They're interested in the situation. I'm sure they are. Kirk Cousins would be a great fit in Pittsburgh. He would have a blast with Arthur Smith. I really enjoyed Chris Long's segment on his conspiracy theory, I guess, about how the Pittsburgh Steelers can use Arthur Smith to bring Kirk Cousins to Pittsburgh. I enjoyed it all. I think Kirk Cousins is a phenomenal match for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think it leaves little question marks, and I think it makes the Pittsburgh Steelers a Super Bowl contender almost immediately. But $40 million for a team that is currently $4 million away from just the salary cap floor, I don't know if that's a possibility. I don't know if you're coming up with that type of money. I don't know if you even want to exhaust the options to come up with that type of money, especially for a quarterback when you already have a young quarterback that you would like to see turn into a cheap option for the next 2 years, maybe 3 years, depending on how bad his contract is. Kirk Cousins, to me, is very far-fetched, has been very far-fetched. If you could come up with the money, great. The Steelers aren't looking to come up with that money. They aren't looking to sign somebody to $40+ million a year. And if fans are sitting around going, why would you sign Justin Fields to $25 million? You're not going to like what the Steelers have to do to come up with $40 million. Kirk Cousins, I think, is out the window. Russell Wilson's another name. I think this one's a lot more interesting. I think this one's a lot more realistic than people want to admit, because Russell Wilson isn't going to be worth a boatload of money. He's going to leave Denver, already get a massive paycheck because they're taking on an $86 million dead hit just to get rid of him. And once that happens, why would you not go out and see if you could get him for cheap? See if you could get him for $25 million, $30 million. You could come up with $30 million. There's a difference between 30 and 40, 45. Significant difference when it comes to 30, 40, 45. Russell Wilson's a dude who's a winner in the NFL. I get it. Russell Wilson's got a weird name attached to him right now. He's got a weird image attached to him. There's a lot of memes and jokes and I don't know if I want Russell Wilson on my team or leading my team. I don't know if I want to root for this guy. He's a winner in the NFL. He's proven to be a winner in the NFL. He was winning with Denver last season, and Denver doesn't have half the weapons that the Pittsburgh Steelers do. I think it's probably their second most realistic option, because you look at the situation, maybe their third most realistic option. But I think it's a sleeper for sure. I think Russell Wilson's a guy that you could look at right here, right now, and say if he hits the open market, there will be teams that approach him, but I don't know if any team will be as fascinating as the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I don't know if Russell Wilson's going to want to go anywhere else than a team with young weapons, a good running game, a new offensive coordinator, a developing offensive line, and a strong defense. Oh, and Mike Tomlin. I just think that that's a great match for anybody. And to try and convince him to come here for not a boatload of money, I think it could happen. I really do think it could happen. Then there's the Desmond Ridder, Ryan Tannehill talk. Desmond Ridder, man, we could toss out the window. If that happens, everybody should be just as upset as they are. There should be no need for competition between the third-round pick in Kenny Pickett's draft who didn't work out and Kenny Pickett from Kenny Pickett's draft who hasn't worked out. That's just doesn't make any sense. And anybody sitting around saying, oh, Desmond Ridder, well, maybe. No. I was a fan of Desmond Ridder in college. I liked Desmond Ridder in college. But you might as well go get Tyler Heineke or a Marcus Mariota or any of these other quarterbacks who are just as good and maybe have a little bit more confidence in them, because Desmond Ridder ain't it. And I don't think the Steelers are even considering Desmond Ridder. I don't even think that's on their radar. I don't think Arthur Smith wants to run it back with Desmond Ridder. I just don't think that's going to happen. Tannehill, on the other hand, certainly an option. Definitely their most realistic option outside of Mason Rudolph, I guess, but I don't know if Mason Rudolph's going to want to come back to Pittsburgh. It doesn't sound like he does. Ryan Tannehill is hands down their most realistic option. He's going to be super cheap. He's going to come in here with experience. They're going to look at him and say, this guy could be a starter if we need him to be a starter, but he could be a backup if we need him to be a backup. He gives Kenny Pickett not much pressure, allows him to be that guy, and allows Kenny Pickett to decide his fate instead of somebody else deciding it for him. I think that's exactly what the Steelers are looking for. Should it be? Probably not. They should probably shoot a little bit higher than that. But if we're just talking realistic and scenarios that are more likely to happen than others, that's where we sit. You got to give it to Ryan Tannehill as the most realistic option, and as crazy as this sounds, Russell Wilson might be number 2. Justin Fields follows. Mason Rudolph, if he decides to, surpasses them all. But I don't think he wants to. And in February 16th to be exact, plenty of weeks left, plenty of months left before any of this is even decided. That's where we stand. And that's where the current quarterback situation for the Pittsburgh Steelers stands. And like it or not, that's probably the order that their big board has all these guys listed in.